Hello everyone, so this is actually my first video tutorial and I'll be showing you how useState works in React. So if you're just starting out with React, I believe it's very important that you master how to use useState because most modern web pages are very interactive and you constantly need to change items on your web page. I will be building a book application and by my left here, I already have a web page opened. So this is how my book application is going to look like when I'm done, and every time I click this change book button, the book on my web page changes. The only reason I'm able to do this is because I'm using useState, and I will show you what I mean by that shortly. First, I'm going to try building this book application without useState and we will see if it works. Now let me go to my editor. The first thing I will do is show you around. I have my app.js file where I have my app components, and this is where I'll be writing my code. I also have my data already. My data is an array of objects, and within each object I have a title, I have author, I have image, and I have year. I also have my CSS already, and of course my index.js file where I'm rendering my app components. Now I will go back to my app.js file. I can close this. And I'm going to write my HTML elements. I don't need this, so I will start with a container element, then I need my image, then h2 for the title, paragraph for the author, and I need span for the year. The next thing I want to do is display one of the books. First, I have to import my data. Import data from data. And since my data is an array, I have to create a variable to actually hold that book. And you already know how we access items in an array. We have to use the index. So we can name my variable book and we give it index of 0. Now I can populate my HTML elements with properties from the book. This should be source, and we give it book.image, then we give this book.title, and for the author we can start with author, then book.author. We will do the same thing for the year. Book.year. Now let's see if this works. I will run my server and that will be npm start. As you can see, I'm displaying one of the books already. And the only thing we are missing here is a button. We can actually add that now. Create a button. Then we can give this change book. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm going to try to change the book on my web page without actually using useState. One thing you must have noticed is that I'm currently hard coding my index, and we don't want to do that because the only way I can actually change my book is by actually manipulating my index. So I have to create a variable for it. Let's create a variable. I'm going to give it let index equals to 0, and I can now delete this and change it to index. So how do I switch the books in my application? I can actually do that by incrementing my index here by 1, and you can guess already, if I keep doing that, I'm going to get an error after the last book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a conditional statement, and that will be if index is greater or equals to 0 and index is less than data dot length -1, then index equals index plus 1 s index equals 0. So the next thing I want to do is pass my change index function to a click event listener, and the way I will do that is I'm going to use onClick in my button, and then I'll pass my function now. Let's try this out. As you can see, my book is not changing. Why is that? The reason my book is not changing is because I'm not using useState. And if you want to be so sure that my index is actually increasing and my logic is working, we can actually check, we can actually console log the index. Now let me inspect my console. I'll refresh this. As you can see, my function is working. So it's actually because I'm not using useState. In React, if you need to update the data in your components, you can use useState. Of course, there are other options, but in this tutorial, I will focus on useState. Now what I will do is I'm going to refactor my code to use useState. To use useState, the first thing you have to do is import it, and I'm going to do that now. Import useState from React. Now I can delete this because I no longer need them. One thing you should know about useState is that it's actually a React hook that returns an array with 2 items in it. The first item in the array represents your current state, and the second item is the function that allows you to change that state. Now I will destructure that array, and the way to do that is, now let me pass my data to useState. For the first item, I will use book, and for the second item, you always want to start with set book. I will do the same for my index since I actually need to change index. Set index. I will pass in 0. Now one thing you will notice is while my application is working, the properties in my objects, I can no longer see the properties in my objects. Why is that? Because the book here is now an array, and like you know, we can't use the dot notation to access an array. If you want to be sure about what I'm talking about, we can actually console log book. Now I'll reload my page and inspect my console. You can see we have an array with 4 items here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable to hold one of the items in my array. Can name it current book. Then it will be book index. What I will do next is I have to change this book to current book. Now as you can see, it works now. Now the next thing I have to do is I have to refactor my change index, and the major change I will make here is I have to use the set index to actually change the index. So let's try this out. I'll remove this, then let's use set index. So for the set function, you can actually pass in any value to it. Now for instance, I'll pass 3 and try this button now. You can see it works. I can also pass in 2. You can see it works. I can also pass in a function. Now you want to make sure anytime you are using a function, you have to return a value. For instance, I will try to and you can see I have an error, but if I return to, it's going to work. Let's change this. You can see it's working. So one advantage of using a function in your set function is that you can actually access your previous state, and the way to do that is by providing a parameter. I'm going to use previous index, then I will have my conditional statement here. If previous index is greater or equals to 0 and previous index is less than book dot length minus 1, then return index plus 1, else return 0. Now this should work. I will load my web page and you can see it's working. So that's all you have to know about useState for now. And if you have a React concept you would like me to treat in my next video, please let me know in the comment section.